Kia ora, welcome to Under the Checkered Flag, MotoGP edition. I'm your host Kate, and we're just going to jump right in.
And we are back after the summer break, which seemed super long. I am joined with Kelly and PozzA, who has now got over his sickness, thankfully, and actually sounds like a human being rather than a toad. Before we jump into the racing that was Silverstone, I just want to cover a whole bunch of news that seemed to come out just before the weekend. The first one I want to touch on is that of Alex Rins. Now, while he did have to withdraw from this weekend's racing, he has signed for factory Yamaha for another 2 years. And I think it's a great signing, if not an obvious one, and I wanted to get your guys' thoughts.
It's a great signing for sure. I mean, he is a great rider. Alex is genuinely a great rider, but I did have a point in time where I was convinced that Remy Gardner would kind of get an edgeways and maybe get a seat, but that was like it was still a very far-fetched idea. I was still pretty set that Alex Rins was going to get re-signed, and he did, so I'm happy with it. I don't have a problem with it. I'm just hoping that he kind of gets back to his form because we've just seen very little of him, and it's quite sad. So I'm hoping that within the next 2 years his form kind of regains and we see a lot more of him.
I think it was the right signing for Yamaha as well. Obviously, they don't have a satellite team to promote anyone from this year at least, and he's not done an awful job this year. Obviously, still adapting to the new bike and still not really being at full fitness. Hopefully, he can find sort of what he had towards the end of Suzuki, that sort of race winning sort of spirit, being able to fight. Not so sure, realistically, after all the injuries, that he'll ever get back to that stage, but hopefully he can. And yeah, I think Yamaha have a good lineup for next year.
That's a super solid point because if you're watching the world feed after Rins crashed earlier in the weekend, he was hobbling away, and one of the commentators said that that was just standard Alex Rins, and that did break my heart a little bit. The next piece of news I want to cover is quite a big bit of news that comes in the form of VR46. Now, it was announced that VR46 is becoming the factory supported Ducati team. David Tardozzi came out and said that Fabio Di Giannantonio and Franco Morbidelli will both ride for VR46 in 2025, with Digia getting the GP25 and Morbidelli getting the GP24. This has not been confirmed by VR46, and they have come out and said this announcement was a bit premature. And Kelly, I'd just like to remind you that if you swear, we get a lot less views. So please be nice about Morbidelli. But what are your thoughts on this?
I can be kind about Morbidelli for 5 minutes, right? He does deserve a good ride, I'll give him that, but he does currently have one on a Pramac, and I understand before Paz tries to murder me that he missed the preseason testing, and I do understand that, but even with that, he really just hasn't been up to par. Do I think he deserves the VR46? No, not exactly. But he is gonna have a GP24, which I think is the fair, like the more fair choice. So I don't have a problem with him partnering. Did you have no problem with it at all? I just think it's the fairest choice to have. Did you have the GP25 and Morbidelli have the GP24? Because Morbidelli hasn't even properly adapted to GP24 yet, and it's probably best to have him adapt to that before they him up to like a bigger, better bike. So yeah, it's definitely shocking. I wasn't expecting Tarozzi to just say it, but yeah, I don't have any. This is me being calm about it, but I don't have any big feelings.
Sort of been expecting this for quite a while, honestly. I feel like I've been pretty set on that Morbidelli will be on the VR46 bike next year. It doesn't really surprise me that they plan on giving him the GP24. and the fact that he's sort of just now adapting to the GP24 in general, I feel like that extra year on a bike that he's at least somewhat familiar with could be beneficial. And you can't really deny that Gianantonio deserves sort of like more current spec bike. So yeah, I think it could be exciting next year, and hopefully they both do really well.
That was a really good point that Kelly made, I think, about Morbidelli not yet having adapted to the GP24. And aside from his results this weekend that we may come to later on, given the double long lap penalty, he's starting to show some competitiveness, and I'm quite interested to see what else he can do. But Morby had a bad weekend. Another team that had a bad weekend are Trackhouse Racing. But something I found absolutely awesome that came out was the fact that they have changed their livery mid-season. It was very rah America previously with the flag and the sort of Nikki Hayden touch. I'll throw some photos up on screen, but it looks like a Suzuki, and I absolutely adore this livery. It's probably my favorite on the grid, even higher than the LCR now. But your guys' thoughts? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Is it too much like Suzuki?
Not really. I like the color scheme a lot. I mean, I am. Is it bad that I actually am a bit sad that they're not going to have the faces on it? I mean, I like. I'd really liked the faces. I talked about it on the TikTok a little bit. Like, I thought the faces were really cool, but it definitely probably wasn't a full season kind of thing. But the colors were, as Kate said, very Suzuki-like. But I don't have a problem with that. It's like it's a nice color scheme to look at, if that makes sense. Like you wouldn't be annoyed if you just looked at that all right. So I'm quite happy with it. I think I prefer it over their original livery for this year, so they did well.
I When I first saw it, I honestly really liked it. It did sort of, when they first came out with it, I feel like everyone sort of thought, oh, they're running their special livery early, but no, it was a nice surprise. I think the silver especially looks really nice. It's not like too reflective, but it's enough for you to sort of notice that it's there. And yeah, I think it works really well.
Moving along to the next piece of news, it was something that Kelly and I speculated a bit on last week, and that is the fact that Eddie O'Shea joins MLav Racing permanently from Indonesia and for the 2025 Moto3 season. Exciting. Obviously, I'm a big fan of MLav, and I'm looking forward to see what Eddie can do. Your guys' thoughts on this signing?
I'm obviously quite happy about it. I mean, I did want O'Shea, by the way. If anyone was confused on how to pronounce Eddie O'Shea, it's not O'Shea, it's O'Shea. Um, Besides that, I did obviously want Casey O'Gorman to take that seat, but I suppose being nationalistic doesn't get us anywhere on this podcast. So it was Eddie O'Shea. He is a good rider and I do like him, so it's a good signing. And I think he would actually be a very good partner to Scott Ogden. So I feel like they'd be a good duo. And I'm excited to see what they can do for the full 2025 season.
I'd just like to point out the fact that Casey O'Gorman is one, too young to ride in Moto3, and I'm also 90% sure he's essentially killed any relationship he had with MLav. So I don't think he
No,
was ever going to be a realistic choice.
let me be delusional, alright? He was a good rumor, and it doesn't mean MLav didn't consider him. I mean, even if he is too young, they did that shit with Verstappen, all right? Like they can do it with if they can do it with O'Gorman. Let me be delusional, please.
Nah, that relationship is shot, eh? There's there's no way that they're going back there at all. Speaking of nationalities, the next topic is fellow Australian like PozzA. Senna Agius has re-signed with Intact GP for 2025. A bit of an absolute no-brainer, if you ask me, given how strong he's been. Clearly, I think he's going to win the Rookie of the Year. and his adaptation to a more global Grand Prix racing has just been absolutely incredible. And as Poz has just pointed out, he's a Sydney boy, just like he is. So you can go first with your thoughts, Poz.
Happy when I saw the news that he re-signed. I think he obviously absolutely deserves it, having won European Moto2 last year. And even some of the things he's doing this year on tracks that he's never ridden on before, just adapting so quickly. I think if he didn't get another ride at the team he's at currently, some other team would have absolutely snapped him up. So yeah, I'm really happy, and hopefully he can do really well next year.
I'm actually also quite happy about it. I mean, I don't openly speak about him as much, but he is a genuinely good rider and I do like him, so I'm happy with his resigning. And yeah, I don't have too much to say about it, but I'm happy.
So that's pretty much the majority of the news covered. So let's talk about this weekend. And we will dive deeper into the liveries that we saw next week in the preview show, because otherwise we'd be rambling for quite a while, I imagine. The one question I do have for you both, and I'll give my thoughts afterwards, is which was your favourite historic livery that we saw this weekend?
Yamaha or VR46? Straight out, 100%. Like, um, I will say that the Ducati, like the Lenovo Ducati, was pretty basic. Like, it just looked exactly like their. I actually was convinced it didn't change for like 5 minutes. It looked like their livery for this year, and I was like, they didn't do too much. And Pramac, the colors just didn't really work with me. I'm gonna be real, like the colors just didn't work with my eyes, but I think that's just a me problem. Whereas Yamaha and VR46, I feel like they just look so good. Like I could look at them for just pure hours. So they were definitely my favorites, even though we didn't see much of either of them, but I loved them.
As the very unbiased KTM fan that I am, I'm gonna say the white KTM. I really liked it. I thought it looked really clean. Would have been nice to see it go a bit further in the hands of Brad Binder, but not much you can do on that one. I feel like it probably could have been a little bit better if the blue was a bit less sort of pronounced, if that makes sense. But yeah, I still think it looked really good.
An interesting note on the KTM before I jump into mine is I thought it wasn't a historic livery at first, but it turns out I did some research on it that it's a throwback to the KTM LC4, their very first road racing bike that was created in the 1980s. So it was very impressive and it looked amazing, and I very almost put it down as my favorite as well. But my favorite has to go to Grassini. I know it's not the first time we've seen this livery, but there's a reason they continually run it. I I just love that it's a tribute to the founder of Grassini, and yeah, it just looks totally beautiful. I do have to say I really enjoyed also how some of the teams got quite involved in their, retro theming, as in like the grid girls were dressed up retro, the teams were dressed up in like retro overalls, and yeah, it was just quite wholesome. But we're going to move on to Moto3 because Moto3 set the stage for what was an incredibly thrilling weekend. And I'll start with the podium. In P3, we had Colin Veijer. In P2, we had David Alonso. And in P1, we had Ivan Ortola. Naturally, our predictions were completely wrong this weekend. This was absolutely our worst weekend, all of us, for our predictions so far. But my, I suppose, moment of this race was Jacob Rulstone giving Munoz a bit of his own treatment and punting it wide. It's just, I love Devin Munoz, but it's quite entertaining when he gets a bit of his own treatment and he was not happy about it. What did you guys think of this race?
Uh, I was excited for maybe like 3 laps. And then the last lap, and I was like, oh my God, Colin Veyer's going to get a win. I'm so happy. And then, oh no, Colin Veyer's not getting the win. I'm not happy. It was a range of emotions, although Ortola definitely did deserve the win. He did a lot. He did a lot for it. So I can't hate him for it. I mean, he did a lot for it. And Colin Veyer seems to be like an Aaron Canna or a Lando Norris, and he just bottles it, which is depressing. But I've learned to live with it. A podium is a podium. It's good points. I can't complain. I do like the podium. I love all the riders on the podium this weekend, so it wasn't awful. I just wasn't too happy with the order. The race itself was actually pretty good. I was not bored. Rollstone was very sad though, because he did actually have a good grid position and then dropped like a stone, gone. It was really sad, but yeah, apart from that, great race.
Yeah, there are a few sort of standout riders up there that haven't really been up there this year so far. Just to name a few, Stefano Nepa, Joel Kelso, and Adrian Fernandez all looked really strong. Joel Kelso especially leading some of the race early on. Apart from that, just going to go over the rookies as I normally do. Top rookie was Joel Esteban in P13, unless I'm forgetting someone. No. So yeah, Esteban, best rookie in P13. Nicola Carraro was in P15 as the second best rookie, down in 17th, with Almanza and Bouazri behind. No, Detweiler was back there as well in P20. And I'm probably going to butcher this, but Daniel Sharil, the Malaysian, was riding for 658, replacing Luca Lanetta this weekend. Apart from that, Jabi Ziratuza and Angel Picaras both went down. Picaras had a big high side coming into the final corner on the first lap, taking Scott Ogden and Vicente Perez with him as well.
A British rider that had anything but an unfortunate weekend is Jake Dixon. Because moving on to Moto2, the podium was Celestino Vietti, Aaron Canet, and then Jake Dixon. It was an absolute crash fest, and as a firm and Aldegear fan, being in his fan club, it was extremely disappointing given this is where he got his first win last year. I've just got to give two major props to number one, Sergio Garcia, who put on a world championship ride from quite a disappointing qualifying position, but this entire weekend's got to go to Jake Dixon. That was such an incredible ride. He, waited until he could take Canet, who unfortunately got another P2, but it was just so incredible. And seeing all that celebration and hearing the crowd and the atmosphere afterwards, definitely worth it. And so I'm quite happy Jake Dixon won. But your guys' moments of this race?
Probably Jake Dixon winning, to be honest. I mean, we haven't seen it for a little while, and I do like Jake. I like him a lot, even though he's actually a bit of a controversial character for people to like, that I found out. But I do like him, and I was happy that he won. Aaron Canna, I do believe, deserved the win, 100%. But it is a podium, and considering how off form he has been like the past couple of races, I think a podium is the best he probably could have done, and I'm happy with it. It's good to see him somewhat in a good place. Furman, yeah, I think that's enough. It was just sad. It was so depressing. I was like, oh. Um, and Vieli actually, for a podium, didn't really expect it, but it means that KTM Agile as a team is actually a bit more back on form, which is great to see. Meaning when Dennis Oncu comes back, he could be on track for a podium. But I won't get Poz too excited. And then if the rumors are very true, then Colin Vire or another Moto3 rider could have a very good team to move up to next year. So it's a good podium, quite happy with it, but the crashes were insane. Poor Paws like working on the Twitter is like, he's gone down, Agi's gone down, 02 has gone down. Yeah, I know 02 says Moto3, but whatever. Like, he's all gone down. They all went down one after the other. It was like dominoes. But yeah, it was a good race apart from that.
I just wanted to give a shout out to Celestino Vietti just because he was fighting Garcia for that podium late on, and I didn't really hear any mention of it. I'm pretty sure the commentators did mention it, but Celestino Vietti's last lap was, I'm pretty sure, just over a second quicker than Sergio Garcia's, and he set a personal best lap on the last lap of the race, and I just think that was really impressive. Uh, Something else I'd just like to mention is the WP suspension bikes on of the Calexes, which is Aspar, KTM and Husqvarna Intact GP. They're looking stronger in basically every race. They had obviously the winner Dixon Celestino Vietti on the podium, and Darren Binder was up there fighting for a podium early on. Senna Agius was in the top 10 as well. So it does look like with a bit more data, they've sort of been able to make steps towards the front, and I just think that's good to see.
And I think a big benefit for the WP suspension would have been coming in the form of Pedro Acosta, who did over 200 testing laps on the KTM Moto2 machine. So I think that would definitely have helped them gather a heck of a lot more data. And it's one of those sort of blurry lines outside of the rules when it comes to testing. But we won't go there. Let's look at the MotoGP sprint, because in P3 we had last year's winner Aleix Espargaro, P2 we had Jorge Martin, and P1 we had Enea Bastianini. And this was quite an exciting race. It was one of the ones I haven't watched while being overly active in the Discord server, mainly because I was out earlier in the night. But it was a great race. I have to admit, my moment of the race came very early on, and it came in the form of the Franco Morbidelli collecting Marco Bezzecchi crash. It was quite a surprising incident, obviously not intentional at all, but it meant that Morbidelli had a double long lap penalty for the Sunday. Your moments of the race?
Frankie Morbidelli having a big moment. I mean, was it avoidable? Yeah, a little bit. Did he mean to collect Marco Bezzecchi? No. Am I still annoyed about it? Yes. 100% I am annoyed about it, but he didn't mean to collect Marco purposely. Like, there probably wasn't a way there was a way he could avoid crashing, but there was not a way that he could have avoided collecting him. So I am not annoyed with him about that, but like, I'm annoyed that Marco had to be the one to be collected. But a double long lap penalty, I feel, was sufficient enough as a punishment. So I wouldn't say happy, but I am glad that he had some sort of punishment for that. The podium was pretty bloody awesome, I'm gonna be honest. We actually had Pecco Bagnaia going down as well. So for a championship leader, he struggled a lot this weekend being a championship leader. And yeah, he was just off form. He was off the pace. It was like he wasn't there. And yeah, going down in the sprint just felt inevitable, and he was gone. And that means Jorge Martin has now taken back the championship lead. Uh, Enea won the sprint race with Jorge Martin behind. Enea walked Martin like a dog. Like, oh my God. Enea just ran the whole show. Martin never had a shot. And then we had Aleix Espargaro finishing out the podium, which I feel is a nice touch because Silverstone is his track. So yeah, it was a nice podium, and I'm glad Aleix got something out of it.
Yeah, my moment was also Pecco Bagnaia going down. Just after setting the fastest lap of the race, it just seemed like he was pushing too hard on the brakes going into a tight corner, top of the front. He wasn't too close to the podium finishes, but Marc Marquez also went down sort of close to the end going into Vale, the chicane. I think it was P5 or P4, P5, somewhere around there. But yeah, that would have hurt just a bit, probably mentally. but I'm sure he'll move on. He is Marc Marquez after all.
The Pecco crashing out all by himself incident is something I find quite interesting. I find it so fascinating how both Pecco and Jorge, neither of them seem to want to win this world championship. So I hope, obviously, they both stay on their bike, but I do hope we see so much more chopping and changing.
It kind of is
Go.
just the point of them cracking under pressure. Like both of them do. Statistically, Martin has done it more. However, Pecco seems to be raking up those numbers. It seems like neither of them knowing that like the other is behind them or close to the win. It looks like none of them can handle it, and then they're just down. And that's not really a world champion like trait. But hopefully they can pull their shit together and not fall off their bikes when they're stressed. But that might just be me.
I'd actually argue the point here that Pecco's done it more, as in crash out of the lead, because he's got more of a reputation for it than Martin. Martin's known as a crasher, don't get me wrong, but in the championship fight, I feel like he stays on a little bit more.
Maybe that is true. I actually don't know. From what I know, when it comes to like the very important parts in the championship, it's Martin who crashes more. But maybe I'm seeing stuff I don't know. But that's what I see. Maybe maybe I'm wrong.
We may have to crunch the numbers on this, when I get a free moment, because I'm quite
Oh yeah,
curious now.
yeah. I have to know because I'm convinced Martin has done it more. But maybe I'm really wrong.
It's probably just the fact that Martins are generally more costly because he saves them for the races, whereas Pecco normally crashes in the sprint.
Oh, that's probably it. Yeah.
Yeah, points wise, it definitely hurts Martin a lot more.
Yeah, because I know he's definitely Martin has definitely done it when it's like more costly and more important for the championship. So that's obviously what I was thinking.
Speaking of costly maneuvers, the Trackhouse double DNF right at the start of the Grand Prix would have been very costly. We didn't get to see that lovely livery with the faces in all its glory because Miguel Oliveira ran wide right at the start, and then Raul Fernandez lost the front and collected his teammate in a crash. Really, really unfortunate, but that was definitely my moment of the race. It came right at the start, and I did find it a little bit frustrating that we didn't get a replay until the highlights right at the end. But Enea Bastianini did the double, and as Kelly mentioned, Jorge Martin took back the lead of the championship. Our podium was a Ducati washout with Pecco Bagnaia in P3, Jorge Martin picking up a pair of P2s, and Enea Bastianini, as I said, doing the double. What did you guys think of this race?
Mine is Trackhouse wiping each other out. Thanks, Rel. Thanks a lot for that. It was a good race. I do love Anaya, so I was really happy to see him do something because he is like he's literally just going, screw you, I know I'm better than this, and is absolutely he's like in this weekend, not overall this weekend, like I said before, walked Pecco and Martin like a dog. He was he was ahead of everyone, no shame, no fear, just gone. And it was so fun. Um yeah, I mean, the podium was basic. Like Kate said, Ducati washout. But I do like it. Enea, Martin, Pecco. It's a good podium, and I like all the riders, so it's a win-win. Martin taking the lead of a championship bag is a bit upsetting, but it's not like a big massive lead. It's like a lead under 10 points. So I'll take it. Apart from that, good race.
I'm gonna go with my moment of the race being the battle between Di Antonio and Alex Marquez. They were going pretty hard at it for like a lap and a half, and in the end, as soon as Di Antonio got past, you could see him throwing a few hands up at Alex Marquez, sort of saying, "Oh, what are you doing? Why are you fighting me?" But yeah, it was a good race for Di Antonio. Finished P5. Ended up catching Alicia Spargo late on to get that 5th place. Couldn't quite get Marc Marquez, but yeah, another strong result for Gian Antonio.
I totally agree, and his result was definitely, you know, putting his case forward for the fact that he should be that rider on the 2025 bike next year. The final thing to mention is something that came up during the weekend in the commentary, and that was the fact that the commentators think that Colin Veijer could be at KTM IO next year. Rumors are that there'll also be an Alonso Holgado lineup, as in David Alonso, at Aspar. These are quite exciting rumors, and we'd have to put in a KTM IO section if your two favorite riders are teammates, with Poz being the massive Dennis Oncu fan and Kelly being the massive Colin Veijer fan. Your guys' thoughts on these rumors?
I like them. I mean, despite my earlier thoughts of KTM just not really being on form, Celestino Vietti did disprove that claim. So I am actually quite excited. I'd love to see Dennis and Colin be teammates. If they end up crashing each other out in one of the races, me and Poz probably won't speak to each other for like a week. But I think it would be actually, of course, I'm very excited to move him up to Moto2. As Kate said, even if she is being sarcastic, he deserves it, right? He deserves it. He's solid. Um, but I think it's actually like it's a strong lineup if Dennis comes back from his hand injury. They'd be very solid, very fast, and I would love to see how that goes. Moving on to Alonso and Holgado as a lineup, pretty scary. Um, I do like them, but like I think the concept of them being teammates is very, very scary. But I am happy. Like I'd love to see them both move up. So as long as they don't try and murder each other or crash each other out or hate each other, then two very solid lineups.
Yeah, I think it's very important for KTM to try and sign as many of their sort of junior talents as they can, especially seeing as Intact GP won't be sort of linked with Husqvarna next year, so there's 2 less bikes for KTM to sort of work with. So I do feel like next year they're going to try and sort of tie down as many of them as they can to keep that sort of pipeline to MotoGP going. I'm hoping that means that Akio sort of temporarily ditches his idea of having one sort of less experienced rider and one really experienced rider to sort of carry the team. But yeah, I'm excited for the rumored lineups next year. I think they could be really good.
As always, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate every single one of you. If you're still here, again, thank you. Like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. Let us know your thoughts. Did you really enjoy that Jake Dixon win? Is Senna Agius signing again for next year super exciting to you? And what are your thoughts on Rins re signing with Yamaha? Let us know, and we'll be back next week.